This is coming.
I believe because of you, I think we can say I knew you were powerful, but I didn't know you were that powerful. Because of you, I think we can safely say it's time for a new beginning in Alabama. We have but one goal, and that is to unite the state, to put behind us forever the negative prejudice of the past, to win the general election with a mandate decisively the first Tuesday in November, and I ask you at this time, let us in the morning start preparing for what will be a tough battle of the next month, but I've seen you under tough circumstances before. It was called to my attention within the last hour that Attorney General Baxley had said we are the winners in this election. And I want to once again express my gratitude to him for his generous remarks. And I want to echo what he said, and he was right. Not one animosity is to go forward between this campaign, Mr. Baxley's campaign, or any of the other candidates. Tonight, we are Alabamians. Tonight, we are Democrats. And tonight, let us pledge ourselves to a new beginning that will mean a better quality of life for every man, woman, and child that lives here. I'd like to recognize one or two people. My wife, and let me tell you what they told me after the primary, that if Bobby had been the candidate, we would have won without a runoff, and I believe that. My son, Bob III, who taught me a lot about politics, and I want to call one or two names. A young man named Jack Miller from Mobile that I met back late last year, and he was just leaving Washington, D.C. to go down to Mobile and start a law practice. And he was kind enough to delay that for a year to come to Opelika, away from his wonderful wife, Susan, and family of three, and manage our campaign, and he's done a fabulous job, and I want to give him a big hand right now. But Jack knows, and he would agree, and I know, and I'll never forget, that the real heroes in this campaign are the people I'm looking at right now and thousands more like it. And all y'all remember that special pole we had, the one that was 3 inches in diameter and had the roots that meant grassroots. It's grassroots Alabama that have won this election for us tonight. And it's grassroots Alabama that we are going to serve to the best of our ability in the years ahead. I thank you. And God bless you, and I'd like to remember one other person, really 2 or 3, my brother Cal James, my good friend and practical brother David James, who was our finance chairman. And we've heard a lot about football and a lot about coaches. And I love them all, but I owe a special debt of gratitude to Coach Ralph Shug Jordan, and I want to make that right now. Now this is a happy occasion, and you've earned it, and I want you to enjoy the evening. I plan to enjoy it with you. And then we need to be ready to go to work. Because we've got another election coming up, and it would be a terrible mistake to assume that it will not be just as tough as any of the other two, so let us not make that mistake. Now let me say this. I'm going to have to sound one sad and tragic note. One man you've all learned to love, Ron Clements from Greensboro, Alabama, has been in this campaign from the beginning. And wherever I have been, Ron has been there. Tonight, his 19-year-old son was killed in an automobile accident. And I want to say now to Mr. Ron Clements and his family that our sympathy, our hearts, and our prayers are with him, and we'll be thinking about him in the days ahead. And God bless Ron Clements and his family tonight. Our prayers are with him. Amen. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart. I love every one of you, and I look forward to seeing you in the days ahead and at your knuckle ball. First Tuesday in November.
Okay, let's go a little bit past November and talk about January if you like. What are your priorities if elected?
Number 2, I have a very keen interest and top priority on a new Constitution. And of course, we have to do a lot of organizational and planning to get ready to have a smooth transition from one administration to the other. Governor Wallace was kind enough to call and offer cooperation and counsel and congratulations. So we've got a lot of work to do.
What about reorganization as far as administrative duties are concerned? Do you have any ideas in mind on that?
We have no commitments, major or minor, for any appointments. We will start looking throughout Alabama to put together the finest team of men and women we can find.
Now, you know you have been labeled the new politician, which you are. Do you find that that's going to be a hindrance in any way in getting legislation through the legislature?
What I don't know, I'll make up for with hard work.
Okay, now what about the challenge as far as the Democratic Executive Committee is concerned on the improper financial record? What are your feelings on that?
We
we welcome any investigation on that, and I'm sure as soon as the party has a chance to look at it, that there'll be no problems there whatsoever.
Okay, now what do you think the outcome is going to be on November 7th?
I think we're going to win, but we're going to have to work hard. We will work hard. We'll take the offensive in every county, and we have our work cut out for us. We have a formidable candidate running as a Republican nomination to be well financed. There'll be help, I'm sure, from outside come in, and we've got our work cut out for us.
So you plan to run the same kind of campaign as you ran in the past?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mayor Fulmer's behind you. Gresham called.
Oh, did they? Good.
I'll tell you hello.
Good. They didn't pick it up. I know.
She told me been keeping us.
I think they called me this last time. They had the family party on the family. Thank you. Friday.
Thank you. That's a good man. Brought it over here where I can get to it also. I'm in there somewhere. There we go. Good job down there in Chambers County. Come on!
Here we are.
Let's roll Friday night.
That's right. Hello, Bob. Hello, Bobby. Goodbye, Bobby. Hey, Bob.
I'm gonna leave. We got it.
So every age can be the best you've ever looked.
Pour it on, you're a champion, pour it on. Jenner's doing it, he's bringing home a gold medal in the decathlon. Got to give it all you got to pour it on.
I really poured it on to win in Montreal that day. As a matter of fact, I've been training hard and pouring on the Wheaties since I was a kid, because a nutritious breakfast with Wheaties tastes good and and it's good for you.
Take it from Bruce Jenner. Wheaties is the breakfast of champions.
This is it.
This is it, America, the new Chevrolet.
America, if you're looking for a full-size car that goes easy on the gas.
This is it.
And easy on the road.
This is it.
A car with all kinds of room inside.
This is it.
The new Chevrolet, a new generation car bought and embraced by more than 1 million people in its first 2 years. Caprice and Impala for 1979.
This is it, America, the new Chevrolet.
When we study plants, we get to know all about pollen. And all the hay fever misery it can bring. My answer used to be antihistamine alone. Now I say arm yourself with ARM. ARM helps you breathe freer when even antihistamine isn't enough. See? Full antihistamine relief for sneezing and dripping, plus congestion relief, even for your sinuses. That's how ARM helps all the boys breathe freer.
Boys?
Arm yourself with ARM, allergy relief medicine.
Our segment 3 this evening is a look at productivity in the United States. Now that may sound technical, but the fact is that the productivity of American workers directly affects prosperity or the lack of it. American workers some years ago were highly productive, but today that has changed and it's costing everybody money. Irving R. Levine reports.
You take your car in for repairs and then find you have to take it back because the job wasn't done properly. You wait in a post office line to buy a stamp, and it seems to take forever. You suspect that the American worker is getting less efficient, less productive, and productivity figures show that you're right.
Productivity is simply the amount each worker produces during each hour on the job. In order for people to be able to buy more and more goods at prices they can afford, worker efficiency, productivity, must steadily improve. But that hasn't been happening in the United States for a long time.
The average American worker increased his output per hour, his productivity, by 38% in the 10 years from 1957 to 1967. But in the next 10 years, worker output grew by only 18%. And in the last 6 months, productivity actually dropped by 1%. This worries White House officials.
Our growing living standards really come from increased productivity. We want to get the pie growing, and in order for the pie to grow, traditionally the way that happens, of course, is that productivity grows. That is, each person, on the average, produces more next year than they did this year, and more the year after that than this. And if that stops growing or grows more slowly, our living standards are going to grow less. It's that simple.
Schultz and other experts say there are many reasons for the slowdown in productivity. Teenage employment. The recent flood of teenagers into jobs has lowered average output because many teenagers have no experience or special skills. Equal opportunity employment laws. Companies have had to hire minority workers who sometimes are not fully qualified. This reduces output. Declining investment. Companies have been spending less money on new equipment and on research to increase output. Recent recessions discouraged investments. Safety and anti-pollution laws. Industries have had to spend large sums on equipment to comply with safety and anti-pollution regulations. This adds to costs but not to output. Crime. Growing crime and dishonesty diverts money from investment for increasing productivity into such things as anti-shoplifting equipment. Productivity may also be sagging because of union featherbedding and because people are more interested in leisure and are just not working as hard. Whatever the reasons, the average American worker in such important industries as steel is far behind workers in many other countries, particularly Japan, in increasing hourly output. The average worker in Japan is turning out 107% more today than he did 10 years ago. Next is France with a 72% increase. West Germany, 70%. And near the bottom, the United States, only slightly above Great Britain. More than pride is involved because low productivity makes inflation worse for Americans.
With respect to inflation, productivity is important, because another way to look at productivity is, another name for it is efficiency. If efficiency isn't growing at all, then every increase in wages simply translates into an increase in prices. If I have to pay people 5% more, that means my costs go up by 5% and my prices have to go up. If, on the other hand, wage increases are offset by efficiency increases, then costs don't rise so much and inflation doesn't go up so much.
Worsening inflation adds to the urgency of making American workers more efficient, more productive. But so far, no one in government or industry has come up with a simple way to do this. Irving R. Levine, NBC News.
This hunk of man is my husband, Steve Garvey.
Steve Garvey, the baseball player. And this is my wife, Cindy. And she takes pretty good care of herself.
Well, one thing I do is take Geritol every day to make sure I get enough iron and vitamins.
And we both get good, healthy exercise by following the Keep Fit America program recommended by the President's Council on Physical Fitness and Sports.
It's great, and it's free in every specially marked package of Geritol.
So keep fit with good, healthy exercise.
And take Geritol.
Every day.
Do I have trouble falling asleep? Well, now that you mention it, I sometimes do have a little trouble, but I don't make a big deal out of it. I take Sominex.
Me? Have trouble falling asleep? Well, maybe once in a while. What I do is take Sominex. It helps me relax and feel drowsy, so I can get to sleep.
Sominex, America's best-selling sleep aid. When you have trouble falling asleep, let Sominex work for you.
Sominex sure works for me.
And for me, too.
This is the new Sonar one-step camera from Polaroid. It sends out inaudible sound waves that bounce off the subject and return in a split second. The lens automatically rotates to precise focus, like this. And this.
I caught a fish! Look at all the cords!
If I had to focus, I would have missed that picture. Sharp, instant pictures in minutes. This close, this far, this quick. Polaroid's new one-step's the world's simplest cameras.
Briefly today, in Washington, President Carter lifted the U.S. embargo against Turkey. Congress authorized it at his urging. In Dayton, Ohio, 14 teachers were arrested today for picketing the schools. Teachers also were on strike in other states and 300,000 students out of classes. In Washington, Representative Charles Diggs of Michigan, the senior black member of Congress, went on trial today on charges of padding his office payroll with non-existent employees and taking kickbacks from actual employees. In Hackberry, Louisiana, the huge fire in the underground oil dome was put out today. In Montpelier, Vermont, the Republican candidate for Attorney General said if elected, he would advocate legal marijuana sold through the state's liquor stores. John?
This is the SS Richard Montgomery, one of the thousands of Liberty ships made by the United States during the Second World War. Back then, she was a danger to the Germans. Today, she's a danger to everybody. Paul Cunningham reports from the waters near the English coast.
From small boats clustered near the mouth of the Thames, British divers today began checking the condition of the world's biggest time bomb. It's just 40 feet below. 3,000 tons of bombs left aboard an American ammunition ship when she sank here in World War II. 4 rusty masts and a warning to stay away have marked her as a potential disaster. She's the Liberty ship Richard Montgomery, bound for France shortly after the Normandy invasion. Only part of her explosive cargo was recovered. The rest, most of it waterproofed, is still there, only 300 yards from the main shipping channel. It's estimated there have been 24 near misses. Years ago, the American government offered to try to remove the bombs. The British said, no, too dangerous. For only 2 miles away is one of Britain's largest oil refineries. And there are 35,000 people living in the nearby resort towns of Sheerness and Southend.
Over the years, strong currents and the tide here in the Thames have exerted tremendous pressure on the sunken ship. And what the divers are looking for is evidence of any new breaks in the hull which may have allowed some of the bombs to slip loose.
The survey will take about 2 weeks. It's made every 4 years. And each time the question arises, is there a plan to do anything about the ship and its bombs?
No, we're not touching any explosive. We've not been asked to remove anything. We'll merely note that it's there if it is there.
And so authorities will continue to keep a close watch on the wreck. After all, it's not going anyplace, they hope. Paul Cunningham, NBC News on the Thames Estuary.
That's our report for this evening. Good night from New York.
And from Washington, thank you, and good night for all of us at NBC News.
Every time we run a test, there's bound to be a little bit of tension. Have I done this? Did I remember to do that?
Ken Heyman, safety engineer. This is who we are and what we do at General Motors.
The small cars are subjected to the same barrier tests as the larger cars. And using that technique, we've been able to test the safety of smaller cars structurally with regard to the occupants. Now, we think we have the finest facility in the world. We don't think anybody can conduct the kind of tests we're conducting with the amount of data that we can gather. GM has a real serious interest in safety, and knowing that's part of your job, it makes me feel good. At high speed, we sacrifice portions of the car in order to save the occupants. The crushing in of the front is allowing us to dissipate the energy of the crash. The passenger compartment remains essentially intact.
General Motors, people building transportation to serve people.
I want to talk to you about a man and woman living together without benefit of marriage.
Grandpa defends Swinging Singles tonight at 8, 7 Central and Mountain Time on NBC. Battered, starring LeVar Burton, Karen Grassley, Mike Farrell, and Joan Blondell. The real story of wives who must fight back. Battered, tonight at 9, 8 Central and Mountain on NBC.
Attention affiliates, we plan no changes in our second show. This is NBC Nightly News with David Brinkley in Washington and John Chancellor in New York.
Good evening. One possible explanation for the country's worst air disaster emerged today from the voice tapes of the pilots and the air controllers. A possibility. It seems that there were 3 planes involved over San Diego yesterday, the big jetliner and 2 small Cessna planes. The tower warned the pilot of the jetliner that he was dangerously close to a Cessna, but the pilot may have seen the wrong Cessna and not the one which hit him. The voice tapes show no panic or alarm on the part of the airliner's flight crew. The death toll is now reckoned at about 150. Don Oliver has more.
Planes landing at San Diego's Lindbergh Field make a turn about 3 miles from the runway, as this PSA 727 was doing today. It was at about this point that the mid-air collision occurred yesterday. Today, investigators were attempting to piece together the parts of the Cessna 172 that crashed into the jet, hoping that they can determine the point of impact, the crash angle.
This would have to be a fuselage structure, or maybe attached to the door.
The preliminary indications are that this plane over here, the Cessna 172, was shooting touch-and-go landings at Lindbergh Field. It had just made an approach from the west and was pulling out heading east. This plane, this is the engine from the 727, had just made its final turn and was approaching from east to west. The two met in the air about 2,000 feet up. The light plane collided with the right wing of the jet, and they fell to the ground. According to control tower tapes, the Cessna was advised of the presence of the jet. The response was garbled. The plane went down. The tower did not know if its warning had been received. A picture in the San Diego Union taken by an amateur photographer showed where the collision occurred. On the right wing of the jet, flames streaming as it headed for the ground. Philip Hogue, the chief investigator for the National Transportation Safety Board, said after a meeting with San Diego Mayor Pete Wilson that the light plane should have been vectored away from the approaching jet.
Air traffic handed off to the local tower. The local tower picked it up, and they were in communication with both PSA. They gave PSA clearance to land.
Mm-hmm.
They also talked with the Cessna. What reply was given by the Cessna